At the last VCFE in Switzerland, I had several kinds of vintage computer networking technology on display. One of them was PhoneNet, Farallon's affordable way to network Macintosh workplaces using existing telephone wiring. Let's talk about legacy network technology. I'm the Vintage Collector and these are my stories. Before we look into Farallon PhoneNet, we first have to understand its rival product. And that one came from the Apple world, introduced in 1985 as part of the AppleTalk personal network and later known as LocalTalk by 1987 to avoid confusion between the cabling system and the network protocol. Apple's solution was built around shielded twisted pair wiring.
Chris, networking came to the Apple or networking came to the Mac when it first came up, but a lot's happened since then. Why don't you bring us up to date on where things are in networking in the Mac 2?
Okay. Over the past few years, we've moved from the first network implementation, which was called the AppleTalk Personal Network, through a series of additional services for the Macintosh in the network environment, to now actually new network implementations for the AppleTalk network system.
This is an important distinction. AppleTalk was the network protocol which made Macs communicate to each other. LocalTalk was the physical cabling system that carried those AppleTalk packets from one device to the next. LocalTalk was not the fastest network and neither was it Ethernet compatible. It ran at 230.4 kilobits per second, supported up to 32 devices on a segment, and used the serial hardware already built into Macintosh computers, hence you didn't need an expensive network card. There were also different Apple network connector kits depending on the machine. Earlier Macs used the older DB9 style serial connector. Later machines used the mini DIN8 style connector. Apple also offered an AppleTalk PC card to hook up IBM PC compatibles to a LocalTalk network. Farallon, on the other hand, didn't originally offer an adapter themselves, but claimed that a PC using the AppleTalk PC card could also join a PhoneNet network. In later years, Farallon offered a PhoneNet PC adapter card as well. PhoneNet's origin story leads back to Rhys M. Jones and the Berkeley Macintosh Users Group. Jones was involved with BMUG in the mid-1980s, where he developed BMUG-Net to connect Macs to the campus network. The idea later evolved and led to founding of Farallon Computing in 1986. Farallon later renamed to Notopia by 1998, and Notopia was ultimately acquired by Motorola in 2007. And this is how PhoneNet drastically changed the networking equation. Instead of using Apple's special shielded cabling, Farallon built on something that was already widely deployed, classic telephone wiring. To the Macintosh, this was still an AppleTalk network. PhoneNet did not replace the protocol and did not make the network faster, it was still 230.4 kilobits per second. What it changed was the physical layer while supporting different cabling topologies. And using telephone wires was really clever. Many phone cables had more than one pair of wires. A normal telephone line used one pair, while PhoneNet could use another without interfering with the voice line. PhoneNet also fit better into real buildings. Apple's LocalTalk cabling required additional installation work to pull in the new cables, whereas chances were really high every work desk already had a telephone socket. So the importance of PhoneNet was not that it was radically faster or more advanced, but that it was far more practical and much more competitive on price. A typical Apple LocalTalk connector box was around $90 in the late 1980s, including the connector box and a 2-meter shielded LocalTalk cable. Practically, the 2-meter cable was maybe good enough for very small office setups, otherwise you would have needed to buy an extra 10-meter or 25-meter LocalTalk cable kit for $75 or $125 respectively. On the other hand, Farallon PhoneNet connectors were often sold in multi-packs, with late 1980s dealer listings showing a 10-pack at ranges between $250 to $225. That puts PhoneNet at around $22 per device. Add another $5 to $10 for a 10-meter or 25-meter telephone cable with RJ11 jacks. So let's take a practical look at the actual PhoneNet hardware and see if we can connect two Macs to each other using PhoneNet. For the most simplistic setup, all you need is those two pigtails with the mini-DIN connector plus a telephone wire. The pigtail plugs into the back. Now, which one to choose? The printer port or the modem port? It's communication, right? So let's take the modem port. Wrong. It may sound counterintuitive, but you'll have to actually plug it into the printer port as shown here. At least on systems running old system software, that is. I'll come back to that again in a moment. For a simple daisy chain setup, you'll also need these fancy looking RJ11 plugs. These are terminators. Inside is a 120 ohm resistor which helps reduce signal reflections and noise on the line. It's a similar idea to the 50 ohm terminators used on 10BASE-2 Ethernet networks, just with a different resistance value. And that is basically it for the hardware. One PhoneNet pigtail on each Mac, one telephone cable between them and one terminator at each far end of the chain.
But there must be a catch here. Surely this requires an hour-long hunt for drivers and extra software installs.
Not really. It's almost plug and play, with no special PhoneNet drivers needed either. To the Mac, this is still just AppleTalk and it's already included in the system software.
I guess some of the networking capability is built right into the Macintosh.
That's right. The network, the hardware that's required to do networking, and the software protocols are integrated into every Macintosh and into the LaserWriter also.
And any Macintosh can act as a file server.
That's right. A Macintosh Plus, Macintosh SE, or a Macintosh 2.
Technically, this works with older versions of the system software, but I tested it with System 7.1, System 7.5 and macOS 8.6. First, open the Sharing Setup control panel. Here you define the system owner, a password and the Macintosh name. Then start file sharing. Repeat that on each Mac you want to share from. On macOS 8, AppleTalk can be configured to use a serial port. For consistency, I kept it on the printer port on all systems. Then, to access another Mac, open the chooser from the Apple menu and select Apple Share. If the cabling is correct, the other machines appear automatically by name. From there, you can mount shared drives and, depending on the setup, access shared printers as well. Here you can see the system volume from the Performer 450 appearing on the desktop of my Macintosh Classic. As mentioned earlier, transfers are not especially fast at 230 kilobits per second. Copying SoftAT already takes a noticeable amount of time. You can also open the File Sharing Monitor control panel to see active users and file sharing activity. Unfortunately, the version of SoftAT I copied from the Performer 450 to the Macintosh Classic did not run. So I tried again with SoftPC 1.3, which also took about 3 minutes to transfer. But hey, at least that one actually ran. So far, the two Macs I used were running System 7.1 and System 7.5. But what about connecting macOS 8.6 to System 7.1? That works too, as you can see here, where my Macintosh Classic 2 becomes the file server for the much newer Performa 6400. Unfortunately, I do not have the AppleTalk PC card, so I cannot demo how an IBM PC compatible would join an AppleTalk network using PhoneNet or LocalTalk. But behold, I did manage to acquire an aftermarket reproduction of a network card that works on the IBM PC's 8-bit bus. And that is definitely worth a closer look. What about you? Did you ever use Farallon PhoneNet or Apple's own LocalTalk cabling system? Maybe even connected it to the PC world? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe or even become a channel member if you enjoy my retro explorations and like to support the channel. I'm the Vintage Collector, and this was my story for today. Thanks for watching, and see you again next Sunday.